welcome to the next episode of the River Volta Podcast. My name's Delane, and I have Ian here with me as well, co-hosting. And today we have Danny Ramadan here as our guest for this episode. So Danny Ramadan is a Syrian-Canadian author and LGBTQ refugees advocate. His debut novel, The Clothesline Swing, won multiple awards, and his children's book, Salma the Syrian Chef, continues to receive accolades. Both books were translated into multiple languages. His short stories and essays appeared in publications across North America and Europe, and his forthcoming novel, The Foghorn Echoes 2022, and his memoir, Crooked Teeth 2024, are to be released with Penguin Random House. Through his fundraising efforts, Ramadan raised over $200,000 for Syrian LGBTQ plus identifying refugees. I feel like that deserves a little round of applause.
Thank you.
And he also graduated from UBC with an MFA in creative writing and currently lives in Vancouver with his husband, Matthew Ramadan. So thank you for being here with us, Danny.
Thank you for hosting me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
We are too.
Danny, did I read it right that you just recently graduated?
Recently, I graduated November last year.
November, okay. So not super recently.
Yeah. What is recently anymore in the year of COVID? Yeah, time doesn't make any sense anymore.
Both like the shortest year and longest year of I think everyone's life.
Yeah. It feels like since the dawn of time, since I actually hanged out with actual people outside. So yeah. It's a long year. It's a long year.
No kidding.
You had a little story that you almost moved to Saskatoon to do the writer residence.
I
but you didn't actually end up moving.
Oh God. So I got news that I will be the next writer in residence in January 2020. So before all of this, I'm like vaguely gesturing around. And I'm a person who's well organized, and I like to organize in advance and plan everything. So I rented an apartment in downtown Saskatoon, 2 blocks away from the Saskatoon Public Library. I got people involved in the matter. I joined Facebook groups in Saskatoon and started to collect events and where I'm going to go and stuff like that. And then the COVID happened, and I had to cancel all of that. And Airbnb still owes me a good $2,000.
Oh, no.
I know, but whatever. I ended up doing the whole thing in virtually. I met both of you. You both read in my series, one of the series that I was running at the Saskatoon Public Library. I did a lot of one-on-one, and I got to know a lot of the folks over there virtually. Now, I would have preferred to live for 9 months in Saskatoon, preferably over summer rather than over winter, but that's besides the point. Yeah, but it I think it went well. I think it went fantastic.
I'm wearing a shirt that looks like the shirt you're wearing, and you're going away. I wore it specifically because it looks similar to yours. But I sent a picture of the little reading to my girlfriend, and she asked if you had the same shirt as me because she remembered the shirt. So I was like, I'll wear it. I'll throw it on. Yeah.
I love flowery shirts. Yes. Go ahead.
I was going to say my story is similar to yours but I actually moved to Saskatoon because I got the that I was being an MFA program around the same time, January. But I ended up just moving anyway because that was already the plan. So it's like, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, but might as well move. But it was a little lonely for like a couple months.
Yeah.
Couple months.
Did you get to know a lot of people virtually? Did you end up going to classes? How did you do classes?
We've done it online. So Delane and I, and we have 9 people in our classes. But I actually was thinking, because at first I was a little sad about like COVID happening while we're in a program. But then I realized actually it's probably the best thing to have had something during COVID.
Yeah,
rather than have nothing. Yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah, the virtual residency felt like that, because if I didn't have the virtual residency, I would have been sitting at home playing my video games for 9 months straight, which is honestly seems like a dream, but after a couple of months probably I will just like rot on the sofa.
Yep.
Yeah, they will have to like bring one of those bulldozers to remove me from the sofa. It will be a thing. Yeah, so we're not doing that, no.
Yeah, because I moved in July, and then
Did
it
you?
felt like that. It was just like very depressing for July, August before the program started.
I hear summer in Saskatoon is fun, so
Mhm.
but again, like if nothing is happening, then nothing is happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's nice now in June. It's like warm. Honestly, a little too warm for a couple days recently. But yeah, Saskatoon in the summer is great, and it'd be awesome for you to get to come here sometime. And it'd be great to have something like some kind of like writers event in Saskatoon here with you as well. Maybe a River Volta something in the future.
I would love that, like a podcast live event or something.
Yeah.
I would love to come to Saskatoon. To be honest, my husband is originally from Saskatchewan. He's from Swift Current, Saskatchewan.
Okay.
Um, so we were actually like we were planning for Christmas 2020 to be in Swift Current, which would have been an experience. I wanted to write a book about the prairies and like the experience of a refugee Syrian person coming to the prairies,
Okay.
which would have fit so beautifully in there. But yeah, maybe they will bring me back. I don't know. I don't think so, but yes.
Do you
Well,
want to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Delane.
I was just gonna say we'd love to have
Yeah.
you in the future. We do live events, or we did live events for River Volta in the past. So
Mhm.
maybe if once COVID decides to finally say goodbye, maybe something could work out. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Danny, I was going to ask if you want to talk a little bit about how that opportunity came up, the Red in Residence, or like how, if you would give any tips of anyone else, because a lot of our people we're talking to are MFA students or, about the graduate MFA students. So they'd be
Sure.
interested in knowing a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. I actually really enjoy talking about that. So the Writer Trust of Canada has a page called Writer Trust of Canada Residency Programs, which collects all the different residencies across Canada and gives you
oh,
information to their websites, give you information to when is their application dates, if this is a paid residency or you have to cover your own costs, who's your contact person, etc., etc. There's literally dozens of residencies across Canada. So every year around this time, because this is the season to apply for residencies, I go on this page and I apply to one residency after another, and then I end up being accepted into two or three, and I choose my favorite, and then I go with that. So my recommendation, my friend, get yourself some fantastic reference letters from your professors or from fellow authors, or if you want, just come to me and I'll write you a reference letter. I'm happy to do so. And just apply and see who gets you in the door. I think it's quite easy. Well, it's easy
awesome.
to apply. It's not as easy to actually get accepted. So yeah.
Fair
And
enough.
did you apply before you were done your MFA program?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah, yeah.
applied but you have to keep in mind that I published my first book before I started my MFA program. I published my first book in 2017, and I got into the MFA in 2018, I think. So I already had a bit of a career before. I'm sorry, my dog is trying to eat my fingers as we speak. Just so for the folks who are listening and hearing all those notes, I have a French bulldog, and he decided that he's eating my fingers at the moment. Um, anyways, so I had a bit of a career, but at the same time, I think that we play small. We as authors always play small. I am sure that you can create a resume that includes the podcast that you're doing, that includes all of the different publications that you had, all of the different opportunities that you were offered, and that resume would look great. And the art at the end of the day speaks for itself. Honestly, the art speaks for itself. If you're a good writer, people are going to know. It's as simple as that.
Awesome.
Mhm.
I love the dog cameos. It makes it so much better.
Sorry.
No, it's
What was
excellent.
it, Danny? What was your dog's name again?
This is Freddie.
Freddie.
Freddie,
Oh.
say hi to Ian and Danny.
I'll put
Freddie.
Danny in the title, Danny and Freddie.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. It's usually his nap time right now. Like part of why we are booked for right now for this is because he naps, but of course because I'm speaking, it's like,
Yeah,
oh, it's playtime.
he also
That's
knows he's
awesome.
made for the limelight. He knows he's on camera right
He's
now.
a
So
Oh,
star.
yeah, he's a
yeah.
star.
He takes after his father, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, all right.
So, would you mind telling us a little bit about your first book, The Clothesline Swing?
Sure. So the Clothesline Swing came out in 2017. I was working on writing the Clothesline Swing between 2012 and 2014. I actually finished writing it in 2015, but nobody wanted to publish it at the time. Uh, I I wrote the Clothesline Swing while I was still a refugee in Lebanon. I just left Syria and I was going through a lot of emotional BS. Can we swear on this podcast, or
Oh
is
yeah.
this a
Yes.
PG? Oh yeah. So emotional bullshit. That's the word I was. If you didn't catch my BS comment, and I needed to navigate that. And I'm always a writer. I published my first collection of short stories when I was 19 in Egypt. Um, but I knew that I'm going to come to Canada, and writing in Arabic is not going to help me be a published author. Just going to put the dog down. Go away now. Stop biting me. We're not playing. Um, anyway, let's go
All
back
right.
where we were. Now that he has a bone, I'm just going to put him on the ground, and that would help distract him. There we go, and we can start. All right. So the Clothesline Swing. You were
Yeah.
asking me about the Clothesline Swing. All right. I wrote the Clothesline Swing between 2012 and 2014. At the time, I was still a refugee in Lebanon, and I knew that coming to Canada, I will have to switch my career around because I wrote books in Arabic before. I published my first collection of short stories when I was 19 in Arabic, and I always wanted to be an author. But coming to Canada, I wouldn't be able to present that art the way that I want to unless I write in English. So back in Lebanon, as I was sitting there being the refugee that I am, I decided to write a book. And I wrote the Clothesline Swing. And at the time, honestly, I was like, I'm just going to write this. Nobody is going to see this. This is just my attempt to understand how to write in English versus how to write in Arabic, two complete different languages, two complete different experiences. So the book makes no sense, to be honest. It's just a story that I was dealing with a lot of my own emotions as I was writing it, and I finished it, and then it sat in my computer for 2 years after. Um, yeah, the story is about two queer refugees from Syria who are forced to go to Lebanon and navigate the refugee experience in Lebanon, and then come to Canada and navigate the aftermath of all of those experiences on their emotional and physical beings. There's a lot of magic realism in there. So there's the angel of death is their best friend who just hangs out with them and smoke their weed and drink their coffee and just have the best old time with the two of them. Um, and then I came to Canada and I tried to get published. And because I am the gay Syrian refugee, and at the time the Syrian crisis was front and center in the Canadian experience, a lot of publishers actually sought after me and were like, "Hey, do you want to
Oh.
publish a book?" And I would be, "Yeah, I want to publish fiction." They're like, "No, no, no, we want memoir."
Ah.
I'm like, "I'm not interested in writing memoir at the time.
Mhm.
I just want to write my fiction." So I gave up on it for like a good year. I gave up on the whole thing. And then by chance, I ran into this small time publisher, Nightwood Editions, who are growing exponentially at the moment. They're fantastic folks. And the guy was like, "Yeah, I will publish whatever you have." So I gave him the Clothesline Swing. He read it, he loved it, and was like, "Yeah, we'll put it out." And it got published, which
Mhm.
is not a small fit, to be honest, because I hear
Yeah,
that publishing is really hard. But I was quite fortunate in getting my book out.
that's awesome.
Well, Danny, why don't we listen to a little bit of that reading, and then we'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll listen to your second after that.
Sure. So I'm going to read from the prologue of the Clothesline Swing. This is one of my favorite um, passages in the book. I lost count of how many times we woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of distant explosions coming from the other side of the city. The calm in the streets carried the sounds of war swiftly to our ears and woke us up frightened and lonely. You whined one night, half asleep, pulled out of your land of dreams, worrying that the explosions were too close to us. I brushed your hair with my fingers, calming you down. It's fireworks. It's just the sound of fireworks, I whispered, and you went back to sleep. One night, the explosion was too close. It shook the apartment and woke us both up. We heard the explosion and thought it might have happened right outside our street. It was followed by the sound of machine guns rushing through the streets. We crawled on all fours. As we escaped the exposed bedroom to the windowless bathroom, I laid down in the bathtub and you rested your body upon mine. Your eyes were wide open, like small white dishes. You shivered and started to bite your lips. I got you, I whispered, and hugged you closer until the sound of machine guns morphed into an unrecognizable noise. That night in the tub, I made love to you, as if we were reciting poetry about the beauty of Damascus. I woke your senses with opening lines and flirtatious gestures, sneaking into your word like the first drops of sun rays on the mountains of Damascus. I colored your face with the shades of sunrise as I pulled on your earlobes with my teeth. I roamed the corners of your body like a lost traveler exploring the old sleepy streets of the city, knocking on the doors of your soul with the tips of my fingers, like a shy delivery boy knocking on the wooden doors of old homes in Saruja, carrying warm bread and beledi cheese. I turned your body around and I tickled your feet, and you laughed like a child riding a duwecha in a Jala amusement park. I murmured whimpers of pleasure in your ears like the sighs of an old wooden bridge aching under the pressure of the souls it carries. I joined my body with yours and we moved. As if I joined my body with yours and we moved as if we were slipping up and down the hills of the waving roads of Al Muhajirin. I printed breathless kisses on your forehead while I let your body slip away from mine, covered in my bite marks and glorious sweat. By the time we opened the bathroom door and returned to the bed, the sound of machine guns' fire was long gone.
Wow, just beautiful.
Thank you. I hope you didn't hear my dog like whining in the background. Please
Nope.
tell
No,
me you didn't.
no.
Great. Yay. This is success. Great. Awesome. Let's continue.
You know, there's a line in there that's very similar to the what you're going to read next.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that. The souls carrying the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I just noticed that.
so I'm obsessed with bridges, and I'll tell
Yeah.
you why. So I was born in this home in Damascus that was built around 400 years ago. So it's a traditional home of all of our family. My grandfathers, for 12, 14 generations, lived there. And then the Syrian government in the 1980s decided that they want to build a bridge where the home is. So they indeed built a bridge over there. They kicked us out and took over the house and destroyed it and built a bridge there. Um, and I have had obsessions with that bridge throughout my life in Damascus. And then now every time that I get over a bridge, it just feels weirdly like home.
You'd love Saskatoon then, with our like so many bridges that were like the bridge city.
That's really cool. I live right next to a bridge. I'll show you. I live on Broad Street, and the bridge is literally, you can see it from my window. And that was a big reason why we bought the apartment that we live in, because there's a bridge right there.
And then you also said that this was your first, or it was your first work published in English after doing a lot of the Arabic stuff. I assume it's Arabic. Was previous? Did you say?
Yeah. I published in Arabic.
What was that transition like? Like, what was that experience like, kind of switching over? Because I know it's hard enough, people in MFA doing one language, right? And you switched over to a second.
So I feel like I'm cheating because writing in English is much easier than writing in Arabic. English as a language is accessible to me, if that makes sense. It's a language that I think in, I navigate very well, so it's quite accessible to me to write in English. While writing in Arabic, you are writing in a language that was written down 1,400 years ago, that has a good, I believe, 500 million words in it. And there's a lot of precision to writing Arabic. You have to be very precise in every word that you say. Because every word has a specific meaning that you have to go with. So it's actually quite funny. I honestly think that writing in English is a bit easier than writing in Arabic. At the same time, writing in Arabic, or my background writing in Arabic, gives me a very flowery look at language and the way I can use it. So that makes my writing in English very ethereal, very fantastical. Yeah, like it allows this poetry, kind of like prose poetry, to sneak into my writing, I guess.
It's I've noticed that it's it almost reminds me of like the sentimentality of like early 1900s writing. You use a lot of really good verbs and like very precise verb usage, which are like I have. You said you think in English, but I remember asking my I grew up, my best friend was Vietnamese when I grew up, and I was like maybe 14. I remember asking him what he thought in, because he spoke Vietnamese at home, and he said he thinks in whatever he's talking in. You have that experience? So like whatever, if you're writing in Arabic, a novel in Arabic, would you start thinking in Arabic again?
I mean, if I'm writing a novel in Arabic, who's going to buy it? It's just as simple
right.
Who's going to read it? But I have to say it is a bit of a challenge, because I'm not surrounded by a lot of Arabs around me here. I have my two best friends are Arab, my three best friends are Arab here. So we speak Arabic to each other, but at the same time, we are always surrounded by non-Arabic speakers. So we always switch to English. So we're speaking the common language. So we're not alienating anybody. So I haven't been speaking a lot of Arabic lately. I want to read in Arabic, but there's not a lot of Arabic books that you can find in Canada as well. I ordered Arabic books from Jordan, and it took a good 8 months for them to arrive to Canada, which was, but I can blame the pandemic, that's for sure. But at the same time, I think it's hard to get books from across the world. When I went to Israel and Palestine in 2018, and I found myself in an Arabic bookstore, and my husband left me there for 20 minutes, and that was his mistake, because I bought 44 books. We had to buy an extra carry-on for all of the freaking books.
My gosh. But I mean, you were there, you had the opportunity, so it's like, why not?
Yeah, I completely agree.
I was gonna ask if you ever worry, since you're not really but it sounds like you have a book now, but since you didn't have access before, did you worry that you were going to lose a little bit of your Arabic touch or language?
Well, it depends, because for the Foghorn Echoes, for example, from my next novel, I intentionally was trying to create this blended language between what is the English reading reader is expecting from a book, but also what I can bring into the book with my Arabic language, with my Arabic writing. I'm very intentional about my writing. I spent like a good 2 years thinking about the ways I'm going to write a book, the engines of the book, rather than the actual plot of the book, before I actually sit down and write the book. Um, and you will find that, I think, if you read the Clothesline Swing and then compare it to the Foghorn Echoes, which is coming out next year, you'll find that there's a shift in my writing where I am using plot devices that are more um, functional for the North American reader. I am using ways of navigating characters and developments and beginnings and endings, a way that a North American person would expect from a book. But at the same time, I'm doing all of that while holding on to that poetic, ethereal language that I try to write with. So it's a bit of a challenge. Hopefully, I didn't dial it one way or the other too much, and we shall see. We shall see.
Dad, do you consider the Clotheslines? Do you consider that to be a novel or a short story collection? Because I know it's inspired by 1001 Nights, and so it's a collection of stories with like kind of like a combining overall plot line, right?
Writing formats are for nerds. It's
Yeah.
not for me. Thank you. No, I'm joking. I am a nerd personally, but I would say the book has the word "a novel" written on the cover, so I assume that that's what they want to call it. I just honestly, as I told you from the very beginning, I just wrote whatever came to mind at the time. I didn't have a treasure map that I was following. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I wasn't even trying to impress myself. I just got really stoned and sat down every other night and wrote as much as I could.
Yeah. Did you look at yourself as the angel of death within a novel? Because you were saying he got really stoned and he was kind of watching everyone.
I would say the Angel of Death is a really funny character because I didn't intend for him to be there in the book at all.
So regular Angel of Death, though. I don't think
wrote
anyone intends for him to be there.
intent for exactly right. Um, yeah, but he showed up in the second chapter, so like a good 50 pages into the book. And he showed up as a metaphor. He wasn't meant to be a character. But then he kept coming back and kept making appearances. And again, I didn't have a plot. I didn't have an idea where I was exactly going with the book. So I just allowed it. I just was like, oh, cool, awesome. You want to come in and smoke some weed and talk shit to my characters? Sure. That sounds like a great idea.
That just reminded me of a short story idea, or like made me think of one, like an angel of death who gets really stoned and goes to the wrong place.
Hey, I'll send you that story because I already wrote it. Thank you.
There you go. There you go.
It's what did I call it? It's a really good story, actually. I really like it. I'm just trying to find it. The short story, The Weaseling Mrs. Omran. The idea is that the angel of death makes a mistake and goes too late to grab the soul of a certain woman. So now this woman is living without a script. She's just doing whatever the hell she wants to do. And the angel of death keeps trying to go and catch her again, but he keeps fucking up and killing other people instead. So
This sounds
it's
awesome.
a very interesting story. Yeah. It's a meeting between magic realism and the civil war in Syria. It's a really weird story.
No, sounds like a great story.
I'll send it to you. It will be fun.
Yes, please do.
Do you want to jump into your second story?
Sure.
Now?
Yeah, sure. Awesome. So this story is called My Name is Bridge. My Name is Bridge is one of the short stories that will be included in a collection of short stories I'm working on called the Syrian Survival Notebook. My Name is Bridge, however, got published already in the Fiddlehead because it won the short fiction competition in 2019, I want to say. Mother told me My grandmother has lost her mind. She stood in the moonshine for too long and wandered up in the ocean of stars so deep it was hard for her to find her way back. She was swallowed whole by the myths of the past one night and never could be retrieved. خرفت, my mother said. She lives in the land of fables now. Mother told me not to follow my grandmother to the rooftop on the day of the eclipse, but the banging was too loud. I heard the banging coming from above, and I snuck out of the house curious and filled with fear. I climbed the stairs, guided by the endless knocking coming from above, and I found her standing there with a shawl on her back, lifting the kitchen pot up in the air as far as her arms can reach, and holding a wooden spoon and knocking on it as loud as she possibly could. Neighbors looked out from windows of mounting buildings, enraged by the noise coming from our dwarfed house. She stood, her left breast bare and her white hair glimmering under the dim sunlight, humming to the imagined tune she's playing on her pot. What are you doing? I asked, and she explained that Nanar, the Assyrian goddess of the sun, is angry. She hides the sun to remind her worshippers that she could bring darkness to the world. Nanar scares me. I pictured her a winged woman riding a horned ox of fire and ice, opening her unhinged jaw and sucking the sun dry of warmth and fire, turning the old star blue. I ran back home to hide in my little room. My heart was bounding and my face was red. I saw the sun disappear slowly behind the dark disk, and I wondered if this is the ballad of Nanar's mouth, round and open and toothless and ready to take away our guiding star. I brought my birthday doll for moral support. I tucked her under my armpit. I ran to the kitchen. I fetched a cooking pot and a wooden spoon, and I rushed to the rooftop, ignoring my mother's call. I banged on my cooking pot right next to my grandmother, and she banged louder, our arms extending to the skies like the prayer, our arms extending to the skies like praying worshippers. We swirled in circles like the dervish I saw in the Umayyad mosque. We sang a song of war I knew not the lyrics to, and we shouted a primitive shout hidden in the back of my head since I was born. Slowly, the dark mouth in the sky retreated, and the warmth was back to the surface of earth. I felt proud of myself. My grandmother messed with my hair, smiling. Thank you.
Really
Beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I love the like poetics in your writing. It's so lovely.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
How do you like when you fold in some Arabic words? What's your choices there? Like, how do you decide which ones to really like emphasize? And or do you feel like it's an emphasis when you do it?
That's a very interesting question. I think there are certain words in Arabic that just sound lovely, like kharrafat. It just sounds beautiful. Kharrafat means that she believed in the myth. She believed in the myth. She believed in the fairy tale, which literally is a beautiful concept. She didn't lose her mind. She just switched from beliefs in reality into beliefs in the abnormal, which again, beautiful word to include. I include Arabic quite a lot in my writing, mainly because I learned the whole fucking language for me to write you this book. So might as well you Google a couple of Arabic words for me. Thank you.
I'm gonna cut that out and play that at the beginning. You can Google a few fucking words.
Google this.
Yeah,
I tell
that's
you.
a good warning to have in all your novels that you write. Just I learned the whole
Right?
language. You
Yeah.
can Google a couple words.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly it. That's exactly what I. Yeah. And honestly, like, it's I use this line specifically because one day in like 2018, I was in a panel, and one person got up to me and asked a question in front of like 500 people. Like, we were in a big hall in a big festival, and the person was like, "So I really liked your book, but I didn't understand any of the Arabic words. So, and I looked for a index at the end that you. So maybe next time for the next edition of the book, if you can include an index of all the translations of the Arabic words, that would be great." And
Oh.
I didn't even lose a second. I was like, so I learned the whole language to write you this book. You can Google a fucking couple of words. There are literally
Yeah.
22 words in Arabic in there. You can Google them.
Oh,
So
my
it's yeah,
It's a strange question too, because like if they were to come across an English word they don't know, they would know to look it up. That's all. It's pretty
exactly,
easy, right?
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. Why do I have to, like, I literally am trying my very best to deliver you my art in a language you understand. Um, and I do that willingly and happily because I do want my art to be seen. I want my writing to be presented. That's amazing, I think. But at the same time, I don't want to write you a book where the only Arabic word that you will see in there is Allahu Akbar. That is just not the kind of writing I want to present you. That is not the kind of story I want to tell you. And I do believe that part of the reading experience is that you as a reader have to work a bit with me as a writer. I'm not going to hand feed you every concept that I write about. I think it's really important that you also sit down with the themes that I'm presenting you and actually try to understand them. So yeah, I am sorry the word, if you clicked on it, it doesn't like come up in instant translation on your Kindle, but Google it. It's really
Yeah,
easy
yeah.
to Google
Well,
this.
it's also that like the word is just like there's a specificity to it, right? There's not a translatable English word really. So like if you want to be specific with your language,
Yeah.
you got to let it, and also like you got to let people sit on the word a little bit. And I think that's a nice thing that people do sometimes is they use words that people are not going to normally know. So that you sit on the word a little longer
Mm-hmm.
and you look it up. Like it sticks with you a little longer. So it's like there's
Mm-hmm.
almost an emphasis to it.
I agree. And at the same time, honestly, I'm the kind of person who, if you as a reader tend to be a fast reader and you don't want to like stop there and Google something, I will leave you a clue of what that word means. Like in the My Name is Bridge, right after I say kharrafat, so the line goes, kharrafat, my mother said, she lives in the land of fables now. I'm literally telling you what the word means. You just, or like the concept of what I'm trying to present you. If you don't want to Google it, that's also fine. Just read between the lines. I'm not asking for much here.
yeah.
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
thought it
Delane.
was I thought it was also fun, honestly, to like look up a little bit more about like the goddesses and like the Assyrian mythology that's mentioned throughout. I
Mm-hmm.
did that after I read it. I was like, oh, like who's this like goddess that was mentioned? Because like you said, like you're giving the reader enough to know who, like the essence of what the word means, or if it's a name,
Mm-hmm.
and then so that was enough for me to kind of be like, oh, now I'm interested. I'm gonna go check it out.
I mean, Assyrian gods are the grandfathers of the Greek gods we all love and we have all those movies about. And it's it's lovely that, of course, the Greek mythology is getting its due because it has a beautiful stories to be told. But I feel like Assyrian culture also deserves to be, but Babylonian culture also deserves to be presented. We know that Isis and Osiris are the Hades and Aphrodite of pharaonic cultures, for example. So why not talk about those things? That part of it is also my racial identity is that I am Assyrian. I'm not
Mhm.
Assyrian. The racial identity itself is called Assyrian. You see
Mhm.
what I mean? And my nationality is that I'm Syrian. So I understand how close sounding those two words are, but part of all of this is I want to respect my own racial identity, where exactly I am, the specific part of the word that I belong to, and the specific racial identity that I belong to.
Exactly, yeah. And I think we need more of that. Like you said, with like everyone knows like Greek myth, but there's so many other cultures and religious backgrounds and mythologies from other religions and other cultures that like don't get explored enough in like North American works, or aren't being published enough too. Like you said, where they approached you first wanting a memoir, but it's like, no, like you don't always want to write just memoir. Like that's so unfair.
Yeah. Also, if you want me to write about my trauma, pay me really well for it. Thank you. Pay my therapist.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yeah.
Danny, am I right that Assyrians, like the historical land of Assyria, is in Iraq, not Syria?
Well, the current borders that you see are the product of the occupation of the French and British. At the time, all of that was one land, and that land extended between Iraq, between modern day Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. And at one point, around 5 or 6,000 years ago, it went all the way down to Egypt, actually. And then the pharaonic people pushed them back and took over. So it's a very, like, the Assyrian Empire lasted for a good 3,000 years, for example, which is quite interesting because all of the recorded history is around 6,000 years.
Oh.
Do you ever feel like you're writing historical fiction a little bit when you're writing your work?
Historical fiction. So Jenny Chang, who is the goddess of historical fiction, she is this Chinese-Canadian author. Me and her are very good friends. She and her, God. And she writes historical fiction specifically about the Chinese experience. And she said that every work of fiction, every memoir is in a way a historical fiction, because you are not just navigating characters in a bubble. You are navigating people in real life events. And even when you're writing YA or fantasy, you are inspired by history. You are inspired by the way that we live our day-to-day life. Even if you're inspired to the point of writing opposed to it, you're still coming from the anchor of our day-to-day life, our history, where we come from. Am I writing from a historical fiction? Maybe the memoir. The memoir is definitely, I'm working on it at the moment. So it feels like historical fiction because I'm writing about a person that I, like myself, when I was 18, feels like a foreigner to me, complete foreigner to me. It doesn't feel like, that character doesn't feel like myself right now. So it does feel like I'm writing about a character that I am putting its pieces together as I'm writing, and that feels like fiction to me, even when I'm writing truths, if that makes sense.
That's what I meant too when I was asking, because it does seem like if you write with almost like even a modern present day fiction, but of a real place, it'll eventually turn into historical fiction in a couple of years, right?
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree.
I just recently read. Have you read Disappearing Moon Cafe? Because you brought up Janie Chang.
Janie Chang, yes. I did not read. Yes, with an N. Yeah,
because she does
she wrote.
I was going to say Sky Lee does a historical fiction of Vancouver, the Chinese experience.
Yeah. I haven't read that. I did not read that. Janie Chang is more interested in the mainland China history for her historical fiction settings. It's very generational, very mythology meets real life events. There's always some sort of a god or a spirit or a fox spirit or something in her fiction, which is stunning. It's the kind of writing that I like the most, to be honest.
Yeah, I love that. I love, like, in your works as well, like that mix of mythology and like realism and like magical realism, I suppose, as you've mentioned. Yeah, I love it. I don't have much to add other than I really like that in your work.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Is that the genre you're in, even though it's for nerds? You find?
Genre is for nerds.
Yeah.
This is going to haunt me for the rest of my life, isn't it? Because I actually do love I am a nerd, and that was a joke. That was a flippant joke. I don't know. The Foghorn Echoes has ghosts in it, but I wouldn't have two ghosts in it, but I wouldn't call it magic realism, because you can explain the ghosts in a realistic way. I know I'm being cryptic, but I can't tell you much about the Foghorn Echoes yet. I write. I'm the most comfortable when I can write whatever the fuck I want to write without worrying about genre. That is where I'm most comfortable.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Because at first I was worried about what my title, like, genre was, and I was thinking it was more magical realism. And once I realized it's just absurdist and just like whatever it feels like being at the time, then I felt a little bit of like relief, or like sense of like, oh, I don't give a shit what it is. So just gonna write whatever it is.
Exactly.
At the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm lucky that I am in a place where people are like, oh yeah, your shit is good. Like, you can write whatever the fuck you want to write, and you'll end up being celebrated for it. So that's amazing by itself, to be honest. Just to be clear, though, just to take this question a bit a notch more, is to say I find myself way more comfortable with magic happenings in short fiction. And when I'm working on novels, I am more looking for real life events and more grounded storytelling, I would say.
It's interesting because I've written 2 novels, and then I'm doing for my MFA a short story collection. And one thing I loved about doing the short stories was that you can play around a lot more. And with novels, I think people are a little more unforgiving. You can't be a little more wild or out there because they're on a long journey with you. Have you?
I've heard the opposite in like you like with short fiction, because it's so tightly like close together. It's like less forgiving for like what type of tangents you want to go on.
Yeah, tangents for sure. But I mean, like stylistically or experimental, you can be a little more experimental because they're gonna stick with it for a little while. But if you're very experimental in a novel, it's hard to get through that, and you're spending a long time with like a very out there method. But a short fiction, I find, people will be more forgiving in like method of like how you're telling a story. So, for example, like if you told a story through like an email chain, you can't do a whole novel like that. You could, but I mean, like people are gonna be a little bit more like, do I want to read a whole novel?
Have you heard of Ulysses? James Joyce.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You know how many people have read James Joyce straight through and not want to kill themselves without like something to read with it? You know, like you mean like a companion piece that actually like explains some of the things.
James Joyce is one of my favorites, so calm down.
Yeah, but I mean like you're not like because it's so experimental. A lot of times it's a bit of a slog, and a lot of times it's incredibly beautiful, right?
I agree. Yeah. But the thing is, it is 2 different art forms. The thing is about us being writers is that we think that writers can write short stories and then fiction and then historical fiction and then YA and then maybe jump in and do a children's book here and there. Each one of those things, it's own art form. You see what I mean? Writing short stories for me is about an instant. It's about a moment that I want to reach with this short story, complicate the short stories until I reach that moment, and then I have a resolution after, and now I have a short story. For example, there's a scene in my head about this 2 women who magically learn to walk on water, but then one of them ends up, while they're literally in the middle of the lake, so the water is for them is solid, right? So they can walk on the water, and then in the middle of the lake, one of them actually falls into the water, and now she is underwater, while the other is still over water, but she is trying to push down and grab her friend out of the water, but she can't because the water for her is solid, and the friend who's underwater cannot actually get out of the water because from under the water, the water is now solid for her. It's like they're walking on a thin layer of ice, basically. I don't know where that fits in the civil war of Syria. I don't know how to connect that to any characters that I have in my mind. But that's a beautiful scene. Like, well,
Mhm.
that's a terrifying scene, but it's beautiful. It's
Mhm.
artistic. It's fun, and I want to reach it in a short story. It doesn't fit anywhere in a novel. It just
Mhm.
that's the concept of it. You see what I mean? A
Yeah.
novel is way more about, for me, is about like a big plot, a big plan on a wall. I know where the characters are going. I know where they're coming from, and I'm looking at their character development.
Mhm.
What is their opening belief systems? How did they start at the beginning of the novel, and what is their closing belief system? How did they change by the events of the novel? Does that make sense?
That's awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, like there's the idea that like a character in a novel is supposed to have like a need and a want, and then by the end you're supposed to give them the need, not just a want. You know, the want propels the novel, but then the need is what they change. They actually got the thing they actually need to change. That's the general plot, but I don't feel like short stories have to follow that plot, which is strange because they're shorter. But
I think
Mm-hmm.
novels that break from that can be fun too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no reason you can't do
Yeah.
it. I just find that short stories give me a little more room to have fun. But I also wrote
Mm-hmm.
two novels, so I think it's it's obviously I'm in love with novels too. So
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, my comfort level is short stories. I like short stories because of the instant pleasure of finishing the first draft of short story in one sitting. I would never be able to finish one first draft of a novel in one sitting. Usually, I don't think I can. Maybe with cubist amount of coffee, but
No sleeping,
that
yeah.
won't be healthy. Anyway, for like 6 weeks. Uh, um, yeah, it will start as like a solid novel, and by the end, it will be extremely experimental. Makes no sense whatsoever. If I stayed up for 6 weeks writing a book.
yeah,
Um, where was I going with this? Short stories are cool. I like short stories. They're comfortable for me.
I like that you said they are way different though, because learning after writing two novels, learning how to write a short story is a whole different kind of thing. Like you really had to
Mm,
kind of revisit
completely.
the way you write a story. I think.
I've
Hmm.
only
Hmm.
done
Hmm.
short stories at this point, so I'm like, novels kind of still terrify me a little bit.
Well, both of you, sorry, did poetry,
Mhm.
and poetry scares the fuck out of me. I hate poetry. God, God, writing poetry for me is torture. I had to, and I took a class at UBC to learn how to write poetry, and by the end of the class, I learned that I'm not supposed to write poetry. It's not my thing.
Danny, I was right there with you. That's how I felt in my poetry class. Because we also did one, and then I'd written poetry for a long time, but then I found out, oh, I don't know what I'm doing at all. And that was a great
Exactly,
experience.
I
exactly,
felt
and all of those people talking about like um, um, exposition, not exposition. I God, I don't even remember the terms. They use all of those big poetry terms, and I'm like, I don't understand any of this. I need to Google this shit. Yeah, yeah. It was too much for me.
It was enjoyable to kind of get really out of my comfort zone, though. I think like not
Oh,
enjoyable, but like enjoyable to get through having done it. Not
Mhm.
enjoyable in the moment.
mm, mm,
Worth it.
Well, you have some
yeah.
good revised pieces now. Like you read them for Danny's going away party for the
Yeah,
SPO, and
yeah.
they're like
Yeah,
they're really like sharpened up. It was great.
It's funny because I wasn't
yeah.
nervous for that, and it was maybe the environment, but I was glad I got to go first. But for class in the classrooms, I'd be really nervous to read them. But like in that,
Mm,
I was fine. Um,
yeah, yeah. That was a fun event, actually. A lot of people showed up. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not really a big fan of readings usually because I think I have a little bit of nervousness. But that felt
Mm,
very loose and enjoyable, and I think the quickness too was really good of each one.
yeah, yeah. I told all of you like 5 to 8 minutes max. Remember? So that really worked really well for everyone.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's not a lot of anxiety in a 5 to 8 minute spot. It's just in and out.
Mm.
Speaking of quickness in 5 to 8 minutes, should we jump into our rapid fire question section, Ian?
Ooh.
Sure.
And rapid fire in no way means you have to answer like actually like rapid fire. We've had a couple of guests be like, wait, how quickly do I have to answer these?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna ask you about 10 quick questions. I guess Ian and I will just go back and forth, and just like whatever pops into your head or
Sure,
how you want to answer them.
Or
sure.
a whole page of responses. Long or
Yeah,
short.
or yeah.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
All right. So I guess I'll go with the first one. Our first one is, what time of day do you write?
3 o'clock in the morning.
Ah, that's a new one. I haven't heard that yet.
Now, do you wake up at 3, or do you go
Yeah.
to bed after 3? Okay, you wake up.
Yep. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm in that moment of writing. It just the best time for me is 3 o'clock in the morning.
How did you discover 3 o'clock in the morning?
My husband is really loud on the phone when he's working, and I had a deadline, so I started waking up early at 3 o'clock in the morning so I can write during those hours before he wakes up, and then I spend the day as a couch potato. And it just worked. It worked like magic. Those 3 o'clock in the morning, like I would finish chapters between 3 and 7 a.m. So now it is 3 o'clock in the morning.
3 and so that was gonna be my next question. How long do you read for or write for? So 3 to 7 in the morning. So about 4 hours you do.
I find that after 3 or 4 hours of writing nonstop, I lose my touch. I become like running on fumes. So yeah, I would say that the longest period of time that I sit down on writing, creatively writing, not editing, not drafting, creatively writing, would be 3 to 4 hours.
I've been listening to this. I just finished this book called Peak Performance, and it's about. I think I told Delane about it, but it's like stress plus rest equals success. You know, you got to stress yourself out. But they were saying 2 hours max is like kind of where the fall off happens, around 2 hours, and then you need some kind of break or like pause in your writing or whatever you're doing. You know,
Ian will tell this strategy to anyone who will listen.
It's because I just listened to it and I've been liking it. I've been enjoying it. You know, you get excited about something and then everyone around you hears about it for a bit. And then I'll be on to something else pretty soon.
Awesome.
But do you have
next question?
Do you have a writing goal during it? Or like the 4 hours, or do you just write for 4 hours, or do you have like a number word count you want to hit or anything?
I work towards 1,500 words per day. But sometimes if I'm just writing and I could write 3,000 words, then I won't just stop myself if I reach a point and I want to continue to write. However, I forgive myself if the 1,500 words are shitty. So I'm totally okay with writing 1,500 words per day on working days. I'm not working at the moment, but on working days. And if they're bad, they're bad. It's okay. You're just moving words in your head.
Yeah, you can't edit something that doesn't exist, so that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
All right. Question 3 then is, what does your writing space look like?
I mean, I will show you, but this is a podcast.
It'll be a video format on YouTube as well. So.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yep.
cool. Well, I'll show you then. Hold on. This is being recorded.
You're,
and I'm sitting here.
Your first
You
tour.
should have said something.
Oh,
yeah. You should have said something. I'm sitting here in my like pajamas and UBC fridge. So this is my books.
Love it.
Right here. I divide them according to Matthew's books up there, and then books that I love right here, books that inspire me and help me with research right here, Arabic books right here, and then there is my big screen, because I connect my laptop to my book screen and I write on the big screen. And this is my little office. I'll actually show you the view.
Oh, the view of the bridge.
This is one side right here, and the bridge is on the other side right here.
Oh, there we are. Yeah.
You're almost right on the bridge, hey?
I am. Yes, I'm the first building off the bridge. Yes.
Awesome. I love the big city views.
Aw, thank you. We're lucky, Matthew and I. We have the tiniest little apartment, but it has the most fantastic view. I'll actually show you. Hold on 1 second.
Oh,
Hello.
Beautiful.
This is English Bay, in Vancouver.
Fantastic.
All right. Awesome.
Delane, have you been to Vancouver before?
I've been to Vancouver once, but it was like we were passing through. We were on a full road trip to Seattle, so I was only there for like a day or two. We went to like Granville Island and mostly just like some of the like touristy stops.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. All right.
Danny, we're gonna
Yeah.
comment on
I
your
wish you told me
outfit.
this was. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I wish I knew that this is being recorded for the TV.
Oh no!
Because I would have. I'm literally like I'm in my pajamas. My house is a mess. I'm sitting there being like, oh yeah, dude.
No, you look great. It's like it's all chill. We're all casual.
You haven't seemed off like you didn't know it was on camera the entire time. I'll say that. You haven't seemed like you're you didn't realize it's on camera.
There's nothing in your
Thank
teeth
you.
either, so.
No.
All right.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Next question. Let's
Question
play it.
4: when did you start taking writing seriously?
I never stopped taking writing seriously.
Start.
Oh.
That would have been a rude question, right? When did you start?
Right? Like when did you start taking writing seriously and started writing?
I noticed a big
bullshit that you
drop off
write?
in your writing recently.
Oh my god.
The quality just
Yeah.
nosedived.
Yeah. When did that happen?
I mean, I published my first collection of short stories when I was 19, so I
Wow.
knew that this is my career. When my father asked me when I was 10 in front of everybody in my family household what I want to do when I was older, I said I want to be a writer, and everybody joked that I will die of hunger. So here we are. I would say when I was 17, I used to have my blog. For those who are young, blogging is something that we used to do back in the early 2000s, where we write our stories and our stuff on our own dedicated website. Yeah, and then I went viral with one of my stories. One of the first times that something goes viral. One of my short stories went viral in the Middle East, and a lot of people visited. And then a publisher got in touch and was like, "I want to publish the whole thing." So that's how I got my first book deal, and I have been writing ever since. Yeah. And in all fairness to your question, Ian, there was 2 years where I stopped taking writing seriously. I was in a very shitty relationship, and I thought that this whole writing thing is really not going to get me a lot of money and allow me to live a good life. So, like the gay man that I am, I started teaching Latin classes, and I started teaching salsa and cha-cha, and I did personal training and stuff like that for a good 2 years. And then I went back to it after I broke up with that toxic relationship.
Was this while you were writing in Arabic or English?
Arabic. That
Arabic,
was
okay.
between 2008 and 2010, I would say.
Were you anxious to switch? Like, were you worried that you wouldn't have had the same kind of like flair or emotion in your writing when you switched from Arabic to English? Because I would imagine that would have been a big decision.
Honestly, the thing about it is that I didn't know if my stories made sense. Because if you read the Clothesline Swing, you notice it's non-linear. It's very convoluted. It's a snake eating its head kind of a situation. Its own tail, sorry, kind of situation. It is a very confusing book in its own way, which partly is due to how much weed was in my system while I was writing it. But honestly, I was worried that my stories won't make sense. So it took a couple of friends who read my books before they were published, who came back to me, a couple of English speakers who came back to me, and they're like, no, they're weird as fuck, but they make sense. Yeah, this is a good book. So my worrisome was not about if I'm writing good or bad. It was about like, do I make any sense at all to somebody who've never read something in Arabic?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Next question is the first book you remember getting really into, like the first book that was like a personal obsession,
Hmm.
or just an old favorite.
I would say there was a fairy tale collection that I read when I was 8 or 9 called The Green Library, published in Arabic. And they're all old Arabic fairy tales that I was really into, and I would read and reread and reread. As an adult, the book that got my obsession was 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. That was
Ah,
that was
mhm,
the book that basically taught me to stop taking writing, to take my writing to the next level, to try to
mhm.
tell a good story when I'm writing, not just a fun short story. I wanted to write a meaningful story.
Awesome.
And it's not quite linear either, right? Like
Oh
straightforward
yeah,
either. Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah, yeah. I definitely Gabriel Garcia Marquez is one of my biggest influences.
You can see the influence. Like I've read
Yeah.
mostly short stories, I think, or did
Mm.
I? Yeah, by him. And you can kind of see the influence there. I guess maybe I'm just less familiar with magical realism, but I'm like,
Yeah.
there's like a taste of, of that in there too.
Mm.
Do you outline your novels or your short stories, or do you just write them by the seat of your pants?
I, huh. So I outline my novels before I write them, and I outline my short stories after the first draft. So novels are intentional. So the Foghorn Echoes, I mean, I'll privately show you later, but the Foghorn Echoes had a like a full on outline right there on a big wall. It was a whole
Yeah.
thing. Before I even put down and wrote a single word in the book, it was all outlined, and I spent a good 2 years just collecting ideas and themes and reasons why I'm writing the way I'm writing, and
Mhm.
reasons why I want to. Because, okay, so the book starts with a big trauma. Two characters that I introduce you to go through a very humongous trauma.
Mhm.
And then the second chapter picks up 10 years later, and that was intentional because I wanted you as the reader to see what they're doing in their day-to-day life. And while the characters themselves are not aware of how that trauma 10 years earlier affects their day-to-day life, you as the reader will be able to read into that, being like, oh, you're doing this because you were fucked up 10 years ago. You see what I mean?
Mhm.
So that is a decision that I made before I even wrote a single word in the book. I wanted to make sure that that's a feeling the reader is getting. That is an engine that moves the story forward. Short stories are explorations by definition. So I write the first draft, and then based on that first draft, I create an outline to why I wrote that short story. And then based on that outline, I can then better the short story, write the second draft, write the third draft, and have a better understanding of the themes, the concepts, the ideas, the morals of the short story, the opening belief systems, the closing belief systems, the want and the need, all of that.
I
Oh,
uh I used to have this idea that even people who say they write just like just by the seat of their pants, they just write everything out. They're actually doing a more detailed outline. They just have to do it
Mm-hmm,
first,
mm-hmm,
right? They just have to do a
I
perfectly
agree.
detailed outline before they realize what they have,
I completely agree. Yeah, 100%.
which is kind of that idea of you write it, then you figure out what do you have, and then you make from that some kind
hmm
of story.
I completely agree. 100%.
all right. And are you reading anything right now? And if so, what is it?
I just finished the Centaur's Wife by
Ah,
Amanda, what was her last name? LeBlanc, I believe, but let me.
The Duke.
Amanda Leduc, yes. So I just finished the Centaur's Wife. Wonderful, wonderful book. Amazing book. I adored it. And before that, I was reading In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado,
ah,
which is a memoir that is it's about it's about abuse in same-sex relationships, in
ah.
specifically lesbian same-sex relationships, and it's just written so beautifully as a memoir, just so emotional, so smart, so driven, um, very honest, very raw. So yeah, I love that too.
Do you look for something specific when you're looking for a book to read? Like, do you try and look for books that you're kind of in the same vein that you're writing, or do you just really for enjoyment? Or
I read books by marginalized authors exclusively at the moment. I'm tired of the white man. It's really hard. I'm sorry, Ian, but I don't know actually if you're a white man. That's
white
an
passing
assumption.
Métis, so I might as well be a
Cool,
white man.
awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't, I shouldn't have assumed, my friend. But yeah, like I'm done. I've read for all of the English literature that I read until I came to Canada, until like 5 years ago, was by white men, the majority of it. And I'm done. So I am reading books by marginalized authors, by women of color, by women, by disabled women, by indigenous folks. Yeah, I am exclusively reading marginalized fiction at the moment.
I think I unintentionally am as well, because I realized my bookshelf lately. I'm like, oh, there are no white men in here, because in my undergrad I read too many of them. So now I'm like, no more.
I mean, I'm sure, like that's also like I see how that would be quite challenging for an artist who's a white man to come in and be like, hey, I just want to write a good story. And I hear you, and I'm sure that there's a market out there. There's millions of people out there who's going to read your stories, and good for you, and you will get a publishing deal, and good for you. Just me personally, I have limited capacity to read, and I would rather read something else.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
What's a book on writing you'd recommend, or something that you go to or turn back to multiple times?
I will need to check the title. I think the title was Spiral, but I need to check the title. Like,
I haven't heard of it. Spiral.
It's on my Kindle, so I need to go to my Kindle to find the title. There is the Wonder Book, which is great if you're writing YA or working on something that is specifically about world building. It's fantastic that way. It feels like one of those books that you used to get when you were young to teach you about the world, or like the solar system. It's full of like illustrations and stuff like that, so it's very inviting, but it's actually quite good. I can't remember the name of the book. God. Yeah, I'll look at it while. Yeah, we can
link
always
it below. Or
yeah, send it to me. Send it to me after, and I'll put it on the screen in the edit.
Lovely, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, and do we have? I think we have one more. So, the last one is what something about writing that's been on your mind lately?
What is something about writing that's been on my mind lately? I think it is, as I'm writing memoir at the moment. Well, at the moment I'm not writing anything, God. But my next project is the project that I'm returning to after my break is memoir, and I think it is memory versus truthfulness, and how do we remember things versus what actually really happened. How we, as where we are right now, and looking about something that happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and the way that we remember it is not necessarily the way that it actually happened. And then on top of that, when you take that memory that is already filtered through your own morals of today, so something that, okay, just to explain myself further, I can remember something that I did when I was 18, but I'm also judging that memory based on where I am right now as a 37-year-old, right? but I'm also using my memory as a way to tell a truth, which is almost impossible because there's no way to verify that truth if it actually happened or not. So basically, writing a memoir is writing historical fiction because we're
Yeah.
coming up with whatever way of presenting that story. So, and to take all of that and then put it in a book and make sure that it's not a summary, you'll have to use things like dialogue, like description, like pauses, and all of that is fictional work. Does that make sense?
Mm,
So you're
totally.
so by the end of the day, the reader is going to sit there, see your fiction that you wrote as a memoir based on your morals as a 37-year-old, based on stories that happened to your 18-year-old self that you cannot verify if they are exactly how you remember them.
Mhm.
That reader also is going to put their own spin on all of this, and they will end up with a completely different experience. So all of this.
Danny, have you ever
Yeah.
read The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
He's a Vietnam War vet, and he writes this almost memoir-based thing about his experiences in Vietnam War. Then halfway through, he tells you, "Oh, I made all these stories up. They didn't actually happen, but you weren't there, so you don't understand the truth of what I was experienced. So you can't ever get it. So I have to fake it so you actually feel the truth of it." Because you weren't there to actually get it. So it seems like exactly what you were talking about, where it's like you're trying to write the truth, but the truth is not always the reality. Right?
Yeah, it's impossible to write the truth as a reality. Just impossible. It makes no sense.
I think
But
that's
at the same
that's
time,
like,
that's how memoirs have to work. Yeah.
yeah. It's definitely stuff that we'll have to keep in mind. We're doing nonfiction in our next term next year of the MFA program, so something we'll have to keep in mind. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. That's
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah,
Of
thank you
course.
so much for coming on with us. And sorry we didn't let you know it was video, but you
It's
look
okay.
great and your background looks
Thank
great,
you.
and we love
Thank you.
seeing your dog.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I had a fun time recording with you folks. I have so much going on in my head right now because I'm thinking about the 4 or 5 different roads that this conversation has taken. So, which is lovely. Usually, after I finish a conversation like this, I go like to my office and start researching things. So, thank you for triggering all of this. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And then I'll send you it when it's up there, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank
Maybe
you.
a
Thank you.
couple weeks before it gets uploaded. And,
Yeah.
And all right.
All right.
Okay. Take
All
care.
right. Take care. Bye bye.
everyone.
Bye, folks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.